So before we jump in with some character class specific tactica for Neverwinter Nights, and I'm going to be pushing that up to my channel here under the Neverwinter Nights playlist, I wanted to explore the base mechanics of the game, the base flow, a couple of tactica points that, regardless of what storyline you're playing or what character class you're playing, things to keep in mind, things to make your quest a little bit easier, to get the most out of it, and to try to level up as much as possible. Now, this duality, while I'm pushing it out and sharing with you some points to keep in mind as you navigate through the game, I'm not going to be talking about specific quests, magic items, or leads, that discovery, that narrative. I mean, it's Dungeons and Dragons. I want you to figure that out for yourself. But we don't want to get frustrated, or we don't want to be in an act or two, character developing a certain way, and then you find yourself, it's not really working out and we have to restart. Or how to approach some of the boss fights in the game, because you know things are scaling up and the story is leading to a showdown, how best to be prepared. And part of this duality is the Dungeons and Dragons 3.5, 3.x rule set. That's what this game, the engine that is running off of. There are some similarities to D&D 5.0, but 3.5, if you've played tabletop, it's an interesting beast. It's very, very much min-max. And on the opposite side, at its core, yes, there's an amazing story, there's narrative, there's leveling up. Neverwinter Nights is a combat-based game. The idea is you're going up against some amazing storylines and some of the very, very iconic D&D monsters from that mythology in the Forgotten Realms, whether it's early level on zombies or later on beholders and dragons. So we want to be ready. On the tactica side, as you move and explore the maps, what we have to realize is we're exploring them in blocked chunks, meaning as the camera advances, kind of the AI and your team, your character, and any summons, hirelings, or pets, when they come into contact and you visually see each other on the screen, that's when the enemy AI activates. And sometimes that script is very simple, as in it's some thugs or zombies and they're just going to wander towards you. Sometimes it's a little bit more nuanced, where an enemy might attack with magic and ranged and then move closer. And then depending on the positioning of you, of your hirelings, of your pets, of your summons, they may run after you, they may look to engage. So there's this idea of once you're locked in, combat is going to compress very, very fast. You're going to kind of get hit, and there are some encounters that there's a lot of spawns. Sometimes there's less, but the monsters are going to start attacking and moving towards you. The focus, of course, depends on, are you a ranged character? And this could be, as an example, magic, casting magic missile, or using a bow or a crossbow. Or are you more close-up work, an example being a barbarian or a fighter, or even a rogue, where you're kind of sneaking and then trying to get position and trying to backstab. You need something to block. You need something to engage, and the positioning is very, very important, because as you move forward, the AI on your party, the hirelings, the summons, they kind of trail behind you. And the reason why they trail behind you, yes, you can click the radius menu and tell them go here, guard there. But the main reason why they trail behind you is so this way you go through the door first, or you pick up the chest first, or you move through a narrow corridor first. It's kind of this pathfinding mechanic, base mechanic in the game. They're not trying to crowd you. So the idea is as you move, you're going to be in the front. And often what you'll see is as these waves of enemies come at you, you might want to charge directly in. If you're a barbarian or a fighter, you can do that. You've got the armor class, you've got the damage output, you've got the hit points. But maybe you want to hold back a little bit. Let your AI team move forward first and then engage. And then move forward from that point. And again, this kind of understanding of how the pathfinding works is vital, especially if you're a spellcaster or you're a backfield. Usually like an archer or an arcane archer, you've got a little bit of hit point pool that you can utilize. But even a mage taking toughness, you don't have that many hit points. So you're in the front, enemies are running towards you. they're going to look to engage you. You want to make sure your team hits first. Now, second, once we're engaged, this is where positioning becomes interesting because the rules are implemented very much one-to-one. You know, as a dungeon master going to tabletop for a second, and Neverwinter Nights does a great job of emulating tabletop, but it's not because it's following this script. You know, it's literally following the D&D rules as written. As a dungeon master tabletop, you have some wiggle room. You can kind of figure out, is it an attack of opportunity or is it not? Do I want to take the attack of opportunity? Do I want to focus? Neverwinter Nights, your positioning of your character. If I'm playing a fighter and I'm engaging the monster in front of me, let's say it's a rogue or a thug, other monsters around me, as I move, as the AI moves me to line up, I will be taking attacks of opportunity, or I will have to make tumble checks, or I will be taking called shots. So it's not just so much run in, click attack, and let the script run itself out. I mean, you could do that. And certainly as you level up certain encounters, if you're playing a fighter or a barbarian or a battle cleric, you don't need to micromanage it. You just kind of let them fight. You take it out. You watch the pretty graphics. You move on. But some of the more challenging fights, and as you move into the mid-levels, depending on the campaign, you know, level 6, 7, 8, 9, that bracket, now there's the duality of you're getting hit with a lot of stuff, and that stuff hits you hard, especially if sneak attack is involved, or especially if it can catch you flat-footed. You want to check your positioning. Literally sometimes back against the wall. Or another great example is, as you're moving through the quests, moving into a house. You move into the house, there's going to be some monsters in there. It is a very, very confined area. They're going to be on top of you quickly. Use that as a chance to position yourself behind a table, next to a table, next to a chest. The physical objects in the game do play a very, very important point. And again, especially at the lower levels when your armor class isn't that good and you don't have the base number of attacks and damage where you can hit, cleave, extra attack and really clean things out, or you don't have the hit point pool. So paying attention to that positioning and to that tactica, it is a clicky game. It is kind of sit back and do the attacks or click your spell attacks, but positioning is more important than you think. And sometimes being able to, from the perspective of, again, as an example, playing a druid or playing a wizard where I don't have a big hit point pool, I want to buff up my fighter or barbarian hireling. Make sure they engage first. Make sure that they're bark skinned up and they're engaging the enemies and I'm hanging back and I'm able to magic missile or divine attack or whatever aspect I'm going to use. So let's talk about early on in the game, a boost. And I'm not going to name specific magic items because, again, I don't want to give it away, but I am going to talk about some basic potions because this, depending on the character class and depending on your build, this is going to help a long way. And even if you're playing a fighter or a barbarian, not to say that they're easy, there is a complexity and there are ways to utilize the feats that are important, but they're a little bit more forgiving. You've got hit points, you've got armor class, you can kind of tank through a lot from that perspective. As you go through the game, you're going to visit stores, and you're going to see some interesting magic items that are pretty pricey. So naturally, you're going to want to save up for it. And the ways that you get gold in the game, the three primary ways that you get gold: selling items. They may be magical, you don't need them anymore, or they're not class specific. You're not playing a bard, and you've got minstrel gloves, you don't need them, you could sell them. That's one way to get gold. The second way is fulfilling quests and getting gold for that. Complete this, get 500 gold. Do this quest, get 100 up front. And then third is actually finding gold in the game, although that does tend to be a little bit here and there as you look at boxes and crates and chests and desk drawers and all that. So from these three primary methods, you're going to save up gold. And it's easy. It's not necessarily the best strategy if you're new to the game or you haven't mastered it yet. And even if you have, some character builds could be a little bit harder than others, to save money up to buy magic items in the store. early on, the first couple of chapters, or if I had to give you levels 1 through 6, pure survival, pure XP, earning experience, is more important than hoarding gold. Like all role-playing games, both tabletop and digital, as you advance in levels, you get more magic items that you're not going to use. You face harder monsters, you get more gold. Eventually, you will have lots and lots and lots of gold, more than you know what to do with, and you'll be able to buy a lot of these items. But you got to get there. You got to get to those levels. So early on, if you see like a really cool belt, or you see something really cool, 3,000-4,000 gold pieces, it could take you a little while to save up for that, especially if you're utilizing the summon stone, or you kind of teleport around, pay some gold for that, depending on the mission. Spending the gold early on to buy potions makes a massive difference. Potions and healing kits. Simply because that is going to keep you alive in those early levels and let you be out there earning. And one of the primary sources for finding magic items and getting them is through encounters, fighting them. And even when you fight some of the bosses, main bosses, sub-bosses, you might not utilize those magic items. I was playing a monk, defeated a boss, got a staff of power. Potent magic item, great magic item. Not going to use it. So sell it. That's where you get these larger sums of gold. So early on, the 3 potions that you want, levels 1 through 6, and you have these on your clicky bar and you're ready to go. You're ready to drop them into your henchmen if needed. Cure light wounds, cure moderate wounds, cure serious wounds. Depending on, it's easy to say just go with cure the most because you don't want to like micromanage it. But early on those levels, it depends on what you are. If you're a fighter or a barbarian, you need the higher heals because as you lose hit points, you click once to heal, you're back up to top. If you're a rogue, sorcerer, maybe you need the medium ones. If you're a wizard, you only need cure light wounds because I'm going to take 1 or 2 hits. I'm going to hit the potion. It's going to take me up. I don't have that big hit pool. If you're playing a cleric or if you have a cleric hireling, you still want those healing potions because you don't always have the time for the spells or things happen. You want to have that ready to go in combat where you can click. Ready where, going back to when we started, this idea of positioning where if I'm engaging from a distance or if I'm fighting one enemy and I'm using a table, a chest to block the others and I have to heal, I can heal. And this way I'm only facing at most 1 attack that I'm engaged with. Or if I do have to pull away for some reason because my hit points are low and I know that next attack could kill me, so I'll risk the tumble moving away. Or if I don't have tumble, I'll take that attack of opportunity. It's only 1 attack. The last thing I want to be is in a trash mob and trying to get away or trying to click and heal. So healing potions, BYOH, bring your own heal. I mean, that's like rule number 1 in tabletop also. Second, early on, bark skin. Bark skin is your friend. Turn you into that fighting tree. Being able to drop one on a henchman. I mean, if you do the barbarian henchman or a fighter henchman, monk, it makes them even more potent. But even going with a wizard or a rogue or one of the kind of squishier classes of henchmen, extremely valuable. Being able to drop that on yourself, extremely valuable. That's going to cut down on the incoming damage output. They're still going to hit you, but it'll reduce it. This is like, if you're having trouble with some of the early bosses, bark skin it up, ready to go. And you'll know when those bosses are coming because the game is very thematic, where it lays things out. You go through some subquests. You kind of have an idea. So getting ready to drop some bark skins. And then the last 2, depending on your character class and where you're going to go, aid and bless. And I will utilize those, not for fighting the trash mobs, but getting a little bit of a boost. Boosting the stats, because D&D 3.5 is all about the min-max stats. If you can stack +1, +2 here, or have your opponent -1 or -2 here, that adds up over rounds and rounds and rounds of combat. It does affect the curve of the dice. So in my own clicky, I stock a ton of healing potions. I'm usually playing a wizard or a sorcerer, so I've got cure light wounds. Then I'll have a bunch of clickies for bark skin, and then the last bunch will be aid or bless. And again, you don't need as many of those and certainly focus on Barkskin before those. That's the starting point at the lower levels. As we move into the medium levels, well, then you look at boosting strength, maybe boosting other attributes depending on your character class and where you're going for DC difficulty checks. But early on, to get you to level 5, level 6, level 7, where now you've got some feats, now you've got some abilities, maybe you've got some spells, you've got some hit points. Getting there depends on positioning in combat, because you are very weak early on, and understanding gold management, using it to purchase potions. I mean, don't go crazy and buy 100. Maybe buy them. I tend to buy them 10 at a time. Buy 10, do a quest, clear out an area, restock. Because you will find potions here and there along the way also, which is why checking out the barrels for the potions as opposed to 2 or 3 gold pieces is more important. Then later on in the game, it's going to focus saving the gold for those magic items that maybe you're looking at in the store. So that's the lead in. I'm also now going to push up understanding character creation and the D&D 3.5 or 3.x rule set, because it is different than 5.0. There's more similarities, but there were, when that game, when Neverwinter was imagined, the D&D landscape was very, very different. So understanding that is going to help, especially if you want to develop a very, very powerful character, or even if you want to develop a role-playing type character. Pushing that out, exploring it, and then, of course, we're going to jump into all the different character classes and help to build a checklist of things that we're interested in exploring, knowing why certain classes, what they excel at, and what their deficiencies are. So this way you can kind of navigate your way through the game.